The distinction that organized your career for decades just collapsed. For decades, the working world sorted people into two buckets: soft skills, hard skills. Communication, empathy, listening, those were the soft ones. Nice to have. A bonus on your annual review. Coding, data analysis, financial modeling, engineering, those were the hard ones. The ones that got you hired. The ones that got you paid. Most people still think this way. Most career advice still works from this assumption. But something changed. Something structural. And that old division, the one that told you which skills actually matter, is quietly becoming a trap. Here's the question this video answers. If AI can now do the technical work, what exactly is left for you to be valuable at? This affects you specifically. If you're in your 20s or 30s, working in a knowledge-based role, analyst, engineer, marketer, consultant, designer, writer, you built your early career on a specific promise. Learn the technical craft. Get good at the hard part. That's what makes you irreplaceable. And that was true. For a long time, it was exactly true. But the hard part is changing. And what it means to be technically skilled is shifting in a way that most people haven't fully registered yet. The people who update their mental model now will have a real edge. The people who don't will spend the next decade getting better and better at skills that the market is quietly repricing downward. This isn't about doom. It's about understanding the mechanism before it affects you. Picture two developers at the same company. Same team, similar experience, similar technical ability. One of them builds features. He writes clean code, knows the architecture, delivers on time. He is good at his job, in the traditional sense. The other one does something slightly different. When she gets a task, she doesn't just start building. She asks, what problem is this actually solving? She talks to the product manager. She talks to the user research team. She synthesizes what she hears. And then she explains back, clearly, precisely, what should actually be built and why. In 2015, those two people had roughly equivalent leverage. In 2025, the second developer is becoming significantly more valuable. Not because she stopped being technical, but because she added something to her technical skill that the first developer didn't. Step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture, and look at why. This mechanism has 4 steps. Step 1. AI compresses execution. AI tools are getting extremely good at execution. Writing code from a spec. Summarizing documents. Producing first drafts. Running data transformations. These used to take skilled people hours or days. They now take minutes. This doesn't mean those skills are worthless. It means the cost of execution is dropping. And when the cost of execution drops, the relative value of everything that surrounds execution, the judgment about what to execute, the clarity about why, the communication of the output, rises by comparison. Think of it this way. When calculators became cheap and universal, accountants didn't lose their jobs. But the skill of doing arithmetic by hand became far less valuable. What became more valuable was judgment about which numbers to look at and what they meant. Step 2. The bottleneck moves upstream. Here is where most people get stuck. They look at AI compressing execution and assume the next scarcity is just more technical skill, better prompting, better tooling, faster output. But the bottleneck doesn't stay in execution. It moves upstream to problem definition. AI systems are very good at producing outputs. They are much weaker at knowing which output was the right one to produce in the first place. That judgment requires understanding context, stakeholders, constraints, and goals, and then translating that understanding into precise, testable direction. That's a communication problem. Not in the soft, diplomatic sense, in the technical sense. Specifying what you need. Articulating constraints. Framing the problem so the system, or the team, or the client actually solves the right thing. Step 3. Interfaces become the scarce layer now that you understand why the bottleneck moved. Here's why that matters for where value is accumulating. Every organization running AI-augmented workflows faces the same problem. Technical output is cheap. Human alignment is not. Getting a VP and an engineer to agree on what success looks like. Getting a client to articulate a real constraint instead of a surface preference. Getting a team to act coherently on a decision instead of interpreting it 4 different ways. These are interface problems. They require translation between different kinds of knowledge. The people who can sit at that interface, who understand enough technical depth to be credible, and enough communication precision to be clear, become load-bearing in a way they weren't before. A concrete example, a data analyst who can produce an accurate model is no longer especially rare. A data analyst who can sit with a business team, understand what decision they're actually trying to make, build a model precisely calibrated to that decision, and then explain the output in terms that shift behavior, that person is still rare and becoming more valuable. Step 4. The definition of technical is being rewritten. Here's the final step of the mechanism, and the most important one. Communication is not becoming valuable because it's a nice complement to technical skill. It is becoming technical skill. In AI-augmented work, the ability to specify precisely, to prompt accurately, to translate between stakeholder intent and system input, these are engineering problems. They require rigor. They require iteration. They require the same intellectual discipline we use to associate only with code or data. The old category of soft skills was always slightly misleading. But now, it's actively wrong. The skills it described, clarity, precision, structured reasoning expressed in language, are some of the hardest skills to develop and some of the highest leverage ones in the current environment. The distinction didn't just collapse. It inverted. You're a mid-level analyst. You're good with data. You know your tools. You've built a reputation for delivering accurate work. If you don't update your model, here's what the next few years look like. You keep doing what you do. The work gets easier in some ways. AI handles more of the grunt work, but you notice that the decisions are increasingly being made by people who seem less technically rigorous than you and more politically connected. You assume this is unfair. It isn't. They've just learned to operate at the layer where decisions actually happen. If you do update your model, the next few years look different. You start thinking about your technical output as only half the job. The other half is the work of precision. Clearly defining the problem before you touch the data. Communicating the result in a way that actually changes what happens next. Building a reputation not just for accuracy, but for judgment. You become the person who bridges the technical and the human layer. Same skill set at the start. Very different trajectories 2 years in. The difference is not talent. It's which half of the job you decided to take seriously. There's one shift worth making, and it isn't about learning a new skill. It's about reclassifying a skill you already have. Start treating communication as a technical discipline with the same standards of rigor you apply to your primary craft. What that looks like in practice when you explain a result, treat it as an engineering problem. What does this person need to know? What can they safely not know? What would cause them to misunderstand? What is the one thing that has to land clearly for the right decision to get made? Write a specification for your communication, the way you'd write one for a system. Most people treat communication as something you do after the real work. You draft the email, send it, move on. The mental model shift is to treat communication as part of the real work, something you prototype, test for clarity, and iterate on. You don't have to be a great writer. You have to be a precise thinker who can express precise thoughts. That's a learnable, improvable skill. And right now, the market is underpaying it, which means the window for building an edge is still open. Treat every explanation as an engineering problem. That's the whole model. We started with a question. If AI can do the technical work, what's left for you to be valuable at? Here's the answer, compressed into one sentence. The value shifts to whoever can most precisely define the problem, translate between the human and the technical layer, and communicate the output in a way that produces the right action. That's not a soft skill. That's the hardest, most compounding skill in a world where execution is cheap. The old hierarchy, hard skills on top, soft skills underneath, is being replaced. Not by its opposite, but by something more precise. Skills that involve rigor and judgment. Whether they're expressed in code or in language is becoming a secondary question. But here's what that opens up, and what we haven't answered yet. If communication is becoming technical, then it should be improvable with practice, feedback, and deliberate effort, the same way any technical skill is. Most people don't treat it that way. They assume you either have it or you don't. So the next question is, what does it actually look like to train communication as a technical skill? And what are the specific practices that produce compounding improvement over time? That's the next video.